Assemble! Stay dandy, baby. The moment you've all been waiting for has finally arrived. The big finale of the second season of One Punch Man. If you guys were hoping to see a lot of action, superheroes, villains, and giant monsters, then this is going to be the finale for you. And I have to admit, it was actually a pretty entertaining finale, but overall, this episode, when combined with the entire second season of One Punch Man, I have to say, was kind of disappointing, and it's just impossible to talk about this season when not being able to compare it to the first, which, let's face it guys, is still an absolute anime classic. The first season of One Punch Man blew us all away. The action scenes, the incredible story, which is a parody of battle manga, and just the fact that you could tell that the animation team that worked on that show put a lot of passion into that entire series. I mean, the very first season of One Punch Man didn't exactly have the largest budget in the world, but the people that worked on it really busted their asses to make that one hell of an action anime experience, and it's very obvious that they went a different route on this season, and it's apparent in so many different ways, whether it be just the corners that are cut, the lack of speed and fluidity in terms of the animation, or even just the small moments when there's very little to no detail on some of the characters. That being said, I still felt that this finale overall did manage to capture the spirit of One Punch Man, which is its over-the-top action scenes and its large-scale battles, and this episode certainly had it in spades. That was pretty much the entire episode, and for that reason I cannot completely fault it. And there's a lot of things to really enjoy about this episode, like finally getting to see Bang and his brother take on Garou. The actual battle itself is very short-lived, however it is very fast-paced and hard-hitting, featuring a lot of really cool combination moves from Bang and his brother, and Garou for the most part does not stand a chance against these guys. It's a really satisfying moment to finally see him get knocked down a peg or two. However, right before he gets serious, he's suddenly saved by that big goofy giant bird monster who's taking him away to Lord Orochi, and Garou is way too weak to even fight back against this guy. And so that's pretty much that storyline in a nutshell. That is until we get the return of the massive centipede monster who goes by the name of Centichoro, who is definitely one of the coolest monsters from this season, not only being incredibly gigantic, but also being nigh indestructible. Bang, his brother, and Genos don't even stand a chance against this guy, and they throw everything they have at him, really displaying that this character has the ability to either shed his skin and completely molt when he gets attacked by an awesome combination attack from Bang and his bro, but then you got Genos who decides to attack him personally, running around his body, blasting him Iron Man style, and literally getting swallowed by him alive before incinerating his entire body, only for him again to somehow recover. It's really ridiculous, and it was at this moment that I'm like, well, it's really only a matter of time before Saitama is going to show up. However, I didn't know that it was actually all going to be prefaced by the return of King, who was displaying his distinctive King roar, which was just his heart beating, and potentially him shitting his pants all at the same time, trying to get the attention of Centichoro by saying that Blast is here to fight him, that mysterious hero who is yet to make an appearance and is supposedly the strongest character in the series. Apparently Centichoro had some sort of rivalry with Blast. Maybe he got hurt by him. Maybe his other centipede brothers had their asses handed to them. It's hard to say, but it definitely gets his attention as he immediately goes towards King, only to be finished off immediately by the power of Saitama, doing what he does best and the namesake of the series, knocking him out in one big punch. And that's pretty much the entire finale right there. So what's the rundown on the final episode of Season 2 of One Punch Man? This is an odd season, to say the least. I think the thing that's still holding up One Punch Man at the end of the day has got to be its story and its characters. It's certainly not the animation or the artwork this time around. I mean, we have to agree it's just nowhere near as good. And while there certainly are a lot of things to enjoy about some of the action scenes in the series, they just lack that, dare I say, punch that was so present in the very first season. It also really hurts that this is based on a manga series, which has some really solid artwork attached to it. It's one of those manga series that when you read it and look at some of the really detailed artwork, you notice that there's just no way that they're ever going to be able to sort of capture the magic that is this series in anime format. I mean, sometimes art styles with a more simple look to them can actually pull this off, but it just doesn't really seem to translate all that well into this season. And overall, this season right here just kind of led to mostly nowhere. I mean, it was basically the introduction of the Monster Association and their big plan to do something, the introduction of Lord Orochi, a villain who gets to do nothing in this season, but also it was an excuse to finally see Garou in action, a character that they spoke about just a little bit in the first season, and he was without a shadow of a doubt the absolute highlight of this entire season. He completely saved everything here. And honestly, I did like the small amount of backstory that they gave him in this episode. It's minor, but it manages to flesh out the character and make me actually give a shit about him, aside from the fact that he basically is a martial artist-looking Wolverine. Basically, when he was a kid, he always used to play a game of monsters and superheroes with his friends, and he was always made to be the monster, which means he always lost, and he was always ganged up on by his friends. And eventually, this turned into him getting bullied in his school. He tried to seek help, but no one ever seemed to reach out for Garou. No one ever really seemed to help out the little guy. And that's where he sort of developed this complex where he was obsessed with the monsters eventually being able to overcome the power of the heroes, even when it's an unfair fight. It's something that he became so obsessed with that it drove him to be a batshit insane adult with the ideals of destroying any hero that he can find. Again, that's one of the coolest things about Garou, however, is that he's not exactly a hero, he's not exactly a villain, he's somewhere in between, and that immediately makes him an interesting character in a series where everything is kind of black and white in terms of what you actually are. Overall, however, that was pretty much the entire series right here, which is just an introduction to a few major characters, a tournament arc which ultimately didn't really go anywhere, and just building up the Monster Association and Garou the Hero Hunter. In those regards, in terms of the story, it did a pretty good job. The action, however, definitely left a lot to be desired, and I even have to say that even though this episode did feature some really cool moments, at the end of the day, for me, as far as action anime goes, and it hurts me to say this was a pretty average season. That's just the way that I actually view it. It didn't do anything to blow my mind the way that the first season actually did. And that's kind of tough to do with action anime at this point. I imagine it's very difficult to come up with a brand new action series and to do something cool and unique and do it in a way that's actually going to wow its viewers. I mean, think about how much action anime there really is out there and what's actually been accomplished. The problem is that first season of One Punch Man also just went way too high up the ceiling. Like, at that point, it was almost impossible to top with some of the things that it was doing, and that's what makes this season just so hard to recommend. I mean, if you want to see more of the actual story, I say go ahead and just give it a watch. But if you're expecting this to be like the end-all, be-all, best action series of the entire season, or even something that can be held up just as well as the first, you might find yourself being a little disappointed. Overall, there's still plenty of entertainment value left in One Punch Man. Like I said, its characters and its story are really the only thing that are truly holding it up at this point. I'm interested to see if there is going to be a season 3 of the show. I know that the reception behind this season has been lukewarm at best, but there's definitely those hardcore One Punch Man fans out there that still might be able to allow this to become like a big pop culture phenomenon. But as it is, I think the problem here is that they waited way too long to get to a second season, and that wait sort of diminished the hype a little bit, and of course, having that different studio work on the series sort of changed everything. Like I said though, if you are planning on digesting the One Punch Man series, at this point, I'd probably recommend the manga version. Otherwise, if you just don't want to read anything, you just want to kick back, relax, and see some crazy, wacky action, but not be too completely wowed by it, go ahead and check out the anime version. There's sure to be a few things that'll make you laugh, make you cry, and holler with excitement. Overall, however, I have to say that this entire season and this episode overall for me was kind of average. It featured some cool moments, and because of that, I am going to give the episode a 3 out of 5. Now remember, 3 out of 5 is not a bad score. It just means it's average. It just did a few things wrong. It's not exactly perfect, but it's not bad either. It's incredibly watchable and something that I think all fans of action anime should definitely check out. It just isn't as good as the first season. And I'm sorry for harping on that so much, but that's just the way that I actually view it. Otherwise, that's my thoughts on the big final episode. I'd love to get yours. Tell me all of them in the comment section below. Tell me what you thought about the entire second season of One Punch Man. How would you rate the show? How did you like how they handled things this season with the introduction of the Monster Association and Garou? What do you hope to see from the future? Let's have a discussion about it in the comment section below. And with that, thank you guys for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel for more anime reviews, reactions, topic discussions, all that cool stuff. If you guys would like to help support this channel, please check out my Patreon and PayPal accounts. You'll find links for all that stuff in the description box below. And aside from that, I'll see you all next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.